Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Redmen TV and your latest episode of Transfer Insight. My name is Dan Clubb. I will be a host as ever for this one, and I'm joined to be delighted. I'm delighted to be joined by Senior Football Correspondent Sami Mokbel from BBC Sports. Sammy, we'll keep that in, even though it was horrendous. I don't mind. How are you, mate? You okay?
I'm all right, Dan. You okay?
Yeah, I'm all right, I don't know what happened there, but we'll move on. I've done 2 million of these, and that was the worst one ever. But hopefully, you can only get better from here, eh?
Silly season, mate. It's silly season in the transfer market as well. So that's your excuse, pal. Yeah.
Thanks, mate. Somebody had to bail me out at some point. I'm glad you're the man to do it. No, it is. It is silly season. It's been a silly 48 hours when it comes to Liverpool Football Club and transfers. But 48 hours ago, I was going to have a chat with you about sort of the striker search and what might or might not happen with Liverpool. But it feels that search has been narrowed somewhat, and what once looked like a decent sized shortlist is now a very, very short list.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think obviously the interest in Alexander Isak over the summer, maybe not widely reported, shall we say, but I think within football circles and industry circles, and I'm sure a lot of supporters would have known that there was or has been an interest in Alexander Isak. It emerged this week, and I think a lot of outlets have reported as such that there has been an approach from Liverpool to Newcastle just to discuss numbers and to sort of get the extent of whether Newcastle would be open to selling. I think publicly they've been adamant that they didn't want to sell. I think there's an element of truth to that privately as well. I think privately they've been, Liverpool have been led to believe that this deal probably won't be possible. But equally, I don't think it was a straight no privately, but it was going to be very difficult. And I think Liverpool's interest in Alexander Isak would have depended on whether Newcastle could get a deal over the line for your other target, Hugo Ekitike.
Mm.
It is transpired over the past 24 hours that Hugo Ekitike to Newcastle is very, very unlikely to happen. And as I speak to you now, Newcastle have walked away from that because Liverpool are advancing in their interest for Hugo Ekitike, which, at my understanding, is going to be is moving at a very rapid rate, and I think all parties involved in that Hugo Ekitike to Liverpool deal would quite like the idea of having it wrapped up by maybe Saturday, Sunday latest. So yeah, it's moving and it's moving quickly.
Yeah, no, it certainly seems that way. I did read your article on it, put out on the BBC Sport website in the past hour or so, at time of recording again. But I mentioned before we went live, when I could actually speak properly, Liverpool are off on their pre-season tour this weekend on Sunday, so it would tie in nicely in terms of timings of what you're saying there, in terms of trying to get the deal done. Even if he isn't on the initial plane that heads out to the Far East, he may well join up with the squad a couple of days later if that is something that can be achieved. In terms of the deal, I noticed you mentioned sort of numbers of the Newcastle had an offer rejected at one point. We're looking at upwards of £70 million. Is that right?
Yes. So my understanding is that Newcastle's first, and obviously it turns out to be only offer for Hugo Ekitike, landed at 70 million, which was rejected by Eintracht Frankfurt. So, while I can't sit here and tell you I know the specific details of how much Liverpool will go, and I think that is still, as we speak now, is still a negotiation, right? So I don't think the clubs even know what it will cost. But I think what we can safely say is that it will be a deal in excess of 70 million because Newcastle had that offer rejected. So it's a big outlay. It would be if it comes to fruition. It's a big commitment, financial commitment to Liverpool, but it's been clear for a pretty long time now that it was an area that they wanted to strengthen. Rightly or wrongly, having watched a little bit of Liverpool last season and the way that Arne Slot used Darwin Núñez may suggest that there isn't, um, you know, unequivocal trust in in the player. Well, I think all the raw materials are there for him to be a really good elite centre forward, but perhaps just kind of harnessing all that together is perhaps proving a little bit difficult at the moment. So Arne Slot wanted a number nine, would have loved to have got Isak. It's been, that was always going to be hard. So they've gone sort of one rung down the ladder, and it looks like that they're going to land Hugo Ekitike.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And just finally on Ekitike, before we move on to a couple of other bits and pieces, you mentioned a moment ago how sort of all parties are working on the deal and essentially open to the deal. I assume that includes the player himself. He will be open to the move to Liverpool and indeed to the Premier League.
Yeah, oh, 100%. Yeah, I think if the player, sorry, if the clubs can reach an agreement over a fee and a package, the personal terms and that aspect of thing, the player package it will be a formality. That will be wrapped up quickly. For it's probably already wrapped up, but in terms of it formally wrapping up,
Yeah.
completing, yeah, that from my understanding that won't be an issue at all. So it's just now a case of Liverpool and Eintracht Frankfurt agreeing a fee, and that is moving along as we speak. And if they can get that done, maybe in the next, as I say, before Sunday, certainly by the start of next week, then yeah, he will wing his way to Southeast Asia for that tour.
Absolutely, yeah, let's hope so. I'm very, very excited about the prospect of it. You mentioned obviously a moment ago Darwin Núñez and his future looks like it could well be away from Liverpool. I think it's fair to say there's been lots of sort of reports and speculation around Napoli's interest. I wanted to ask you because recently you did a report suggesting sort of Ollie Watkins was a potential target for Liverpool. There have been other names mentioned in passing. I wanted to ask you about Jean-Philippe Mateta actually whilst on the topic of strikers because out of nowhere his name got linked to Liverpool this week. Like, do you think there's any legs in that whatsoever from what you know?
Um, I saw that last week. Um, I was probably just as surprised about it as you were. I checked it out, and yeah, I got not I don't want to discredit any reporters, right, or any reports. I checked it out, and yeah, I got sort of cold feedback about it, negative feedback. Um, as much as I rate Jean-Philippe Mateta, but probably for obvious reasons. Yeah, whether he would fit into the way Liverpool play, I'm not sure. I wonder if that story is a means to maybe eking a little bit more out of a possible new contract at Palace moving forward. But yeah, listen, it's not something that I've heard independently. I saw the report and sort of as I say, the feedback I got about it was a surprise to some people, perhaps at Palace. But yeah, I guess watch your space with that one.